I can't remember the last time I felt human. Sitting on this threadbare couch with the same sweatpants I've worn for 3 days straight. I barely recognize the woman staring at the smudged reflection of my laptop screen. My name's Maya, and 4 weeks ago, my life got shredded by an email that didn't even bother to use my name. Your services are no longer required. That's all it said. No explanation, no signature. Just a sterile line of text floating in the middle of a blank screen like a guillotine blade. 15 years of late nights, endless code, and the slow ache of carpal tunnel, gone with one click. Now it's 2 p.m. and I'm eating dry Cheerios out of a chipped coffee mug because I can't bring myself to wash a bowl. The place smells like stale sweat and unwashed grief. And the only thing keeping me from screaming is the sound of my old ThinkPad humming like a dying cicada. 3 keys are missing, and one's stuck in permanent caps lock. Just like my brain. Stuck. Screaming. And refusing to move on. I flip through the job listings again. Each one a carbon copy of the last. Wanted. Rockstar developer for a fast-paced team. Translation. We want a 25-year-old with 10 years of experience who'll work for stock options and Friday beer pong. I click on yet another job post that demands Kubernetes experience and the patience of a golden retriever. Then slam the laptop shut so hard it rattles the coffee table. My phone buzzes. Probably another recruiter who just wanted to touch base. I don't even bother to check. Instead, I lean back and stare at the ceiling, letting the emptiness settle in like a thick fog. I can still feel the ghost of that email. Mocking me. They didn't even use my name. Like I was just a disposable cog in their golden machine. I was Maya, mid-level developer, always the first one in and last one out. Now I'm just a name on a pink slip. And I don't even know where to begin picking up the pieces. 4 weeks of uncertainty. Of dry cereal dinners and job boards that felt more like digital graveyards than gateways to something new. That was my life, until the headline hit me like a sucker punch. It was a Monday, because of course it was, and I was doomscrolling on some half-baked tech site. More out of habit than hope. That's when I saw it. $500 million tech merger called off amid due diligence crisis. My eyes locked on the words like they were written in blood. No details. Just a vague statement about unexpected complications with core IP rights. My stomach dropped. Core IP rights. The code. My code. The same code I'd built night after night. Bug after bug. While they popped champagne and called me a rock star in quarterly town halls. A laughably hollow word that meant nothing when my badge access vanished. Then, as if the universe decided to stage a cosmic joke, my phone buzzed. Another recruiter. I figured. Another, touching base. But this time, it wasn't. It was a text. 3 words that lit a fire in my gut. DevOps. Call me. My pulse raced. I hadn't heard from them since they fired me. The same people who gave me a pink slip without even the courtesy of a phone call now wanted to talk? I stared at the text for a full minute. The words original platform code jumped out like a warning shot. I felt a chill run down my spine. What the hell could they possibly want with me now? I almost called them. Almost. But then I remembered the email that fired me. No explanation. No signature. No humanity. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crawl back like a loyal dog. Instead, I dug into the closet and pulled out an old external drive, something I'd stashed away years ago when Frank, my old mentor, used to warn me about paper tigers with golden fangs. I hadn't thought about Frank in ages. Not since they forced him out during one of their strategic realignments. He used to joke that every company was a vampire in a suit, smiling while they bled you dry. I plugged in the drive, fingers trembling. My old codebase, the lifeblood of the platform they'd built an empire on. My empire, too. Once upon a time. I opened the first folder. Line after line of logic. Loops. Functions. My heart beat in sync with the blinking cursor. Everything looked normal. Everything looked like it always had. Until it didn't. There, hidden in a block of critical core logic, was a comment I'd almost forgotten. Slush filed per Frank's advice. Better safe than sorry. I felt my throat close. Frank's advice. Frank, the one who'd taught me to write bulletproof functions. The one who'd warned me that free snack bars and beer fridges were just window dressing for companies that'd sell you out the second it was convenient. I remembered the day he dropped a manila folder on my desk like it was a holy relic. "You're filing this under your name," he'd said, eyes hard as granite. "Primary inventor. No corporate co-authors. Not even me." At the time, I'd laughed. A nervous, high-pitched laugh that made my cube neighbor roll her eyes. "Frank, I'm just a mid-level dev. The company paid for the research sprint. They'd never let this fly." He'd stared at me with that look that could burn through steel. "That's why you're filing it outside the company channels. Your name, your address. Trust me, they'll never notice, until they need it." Now, I realized, they needed it. A memory came back. Frank telling me that vultures don't just eat your work. They wear your bones like trophies. I'd filed the patent because I didn't know what else to do. Because Frank had said it was insurance. Insurance for what? The phone buzzed again. Another text. Another corporate panic. "Dev Ops. Call me." I didn't. Instead, I opened a browser window and pulled up the U.S. patent database. My fingers shook as I typed the number. US 8532 to 99,910. My stomach churned as the page loaded at a snail's pace. Like it was mocking me. Then it appeared. Adaptive load distribution in decentralized modular architectures. Primary inventor. Maya R. Caldwell. My name. Not theirs. Not the CTO who'd once called me. A support role with benefits. Not the CEO who'd laid me off with the digital equivalent of a shrug. Mine. I scrolled down. Filing date. 5 years ago. The same year they'd shoved Frank out the door. The year he'd come to me with that manila folder and that look that made me want to run and fight at the same time. A sick realization dawned. They'd built the entire platform on this patent. Every legacy system, every new feature, every integration point. Everything was scaffolded on code I'd written and a patent I now owned. And now that patent was a bomb under their $500 million merger. I sat there, breath ragged, staring at my name on the screen like it was a lifeline. After all the years of being disposable, invisible, the one whose name was never on the slide deck, suddenly I was the one with power. Real power. The kind that could bring an empire to its knees. My heart thudded as I realized. This was my moment. I stared at the patent database screen. Its glow reflecting off the dark circles under my eyes. My name, was listed as the sole primary inventor. The bomb Frank had warned me about wasn't hypothetical anymore, it was live. Ticking. And every corporate weasel who'd once treated me like background noise was now realizing they'd built their entire empire on top of it. I'd barely had a chance to breathe when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something in the pit of my stomach told me I needed to hear this. "Hey, Maya," a voice crackled on the other end. I recognized it immediately. Samir, the back-end dev who used to split Red Bulls with me at 3 a.m. during crunch time. "Samir?" I croaked. My voice sounded foreign to me, like it belonged to someone else. "Yeah," he said, nervous. "Listen, I shouldn't be calling. But," I closed my eyes, a cold realization crawling up my spine. "Trevor put you up to this, didn't he?" A pause, then a sigh that sounded like defeat. "Yeah, he asked me to reach out. See if you'd be open to a discussion. Off the record." My pulse spiked. Trevor Whitman, Zenith Works CEO, wanted to talk. The same man who'd called me a quiet but steady contributor in a company-wide email the same day he fired me. The same man whose smile never reached his eyes. Who'd once told me in a hallway that tech's a team sport. And team players sometimes have to take one for the company. I pictured his smug face. The one that had hovered behind my shoulder in countless conference calls. Always eager to take credit for my work. "Tell him," I said, my voice calm but cold, "that if he wants to talk to me, he can talk to my lawyer." "Maya, come on." "Samir," I cut him off. "I know you're stuck in the middle. But don't be their errand boy. They're trying to buy me out cheap before this turns into a PR disaster. You know it, I know it." Silence. Then a resigned, "Yeah, okay, just be careful, okay?" I hung up before I could think about what being careful even meant. 2 minutes later, my email pinged. From Trevor Whitman. Subject: opportunity to discuss. I didn't bother to open it. Instead, I called Ariel. She answered on the first ring. Chen, she barked, her voice sharp as a blade. It's Maya, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They're reaching out. Trevor, Samir, HR, everyone. They want to talk. Of course they do, she said dryly. They just realized they're standing on a house of cards. And you're holding the bottom one. I let out a shaky breath. What do I do? You do nothing, she said. You don't talk to them. You don't email them. You don't even acknowledge them. Every word you say without counsel is ammunition they'll use against you. I rubbed my temples. But Samir, he's my friend. Then he'll understand, she said bluntly. Right now, you are a legal time bomb. And they're trying to defuse you with guilt and manipulation. You hold the cards now. Maya, remember that. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. What's our next move? She didn't hesitate. We go on offense. I'm drafting a cease and desist, notifying them that any direct communication attempts are harassment. And then, I could hear her smile. We wait for Vortex Solutions to call. Vortex? I asked, confused. The acquiring company, she explained. They don't care about Zenith's feelings. They want the asset, and that's you. They're going to skip the middleman and come straight to the source. My breath caught. What do I even say to them? Nothing, yet, she said. Let me handle the first wave. But get ready, Maya, because they're about to throw more money at you than you've ever seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every late-night code session. Every time I'd stayed behind to fix a critical bug while the rest of the team was at happy hour. Every time Trevor had patted me on the shoulder and told me I was one of the good ones, while lining his pockets with my work. The next morning, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Area code 212, New York. Corporate headquarters. My heart skipped a beat. I let it ring 3 times. Then answered. Maya Caldwell speaking. Hi, Maya. A syrupy voice oozed through the line. This is Trevor. I wanted to personally reach out. Listen, I know we've had our differences. But I think it's time we put that aside. I could practically hear the PR team feeding him lines through an earpiece. Trevor, I said, my voice flat. This call is being recorded for legal documentation purposes. A beat of silence. Then a forced chuckle. Of course. Listen, Maya, we're all professionals here. No one wants this to get messy. We value your contributions. Truly. And that patent, well, it's obviously a misunderstanding. I mean, you did great work. But what? I snapped. But it was a team effort. He said quickly. You know how these things are. So many hands in the pot. We'd like to make this right. We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package. A consulting role if you'd like, just to clear things up. I felt my lip curl. Trevor, I wrote every line of that code while I was bleeding from a sinus infection and watching my mother fight cancer from a hospital bed. I built your entire architecture while the rest of the team was deciding on Slack channel names. And then you fired me with a single line of text. Silence. I don't want your apology. I said, I don't want your hush money. And I sure as hell don't want to work for you again. Trevor's voice turned cold. Maya, be reasonable. I hung up. A minute later, a text from Ariel buzzed in. Good, let them sweat. Vortex legal team just reached out. They're ready to talk, without Zenith in the room. You're about to find out what real power looks like. I stared at the text. A grin slowly spreading across my face. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, I felt like I was holding the cards. And I wasn't about to fold. I sat at my scratched-up kitchen table. The same one I'd bled over for years of deadlines and sprints that never ended. The sun was setting outside, painting the apartment in dusty orange. I could smell stale coffee and defeat lingering in the air. But something had shifted inside me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. Vortex had reached out. Vortex, the very company that had been about to buy Zenith Works for $500 million, wanted to talk to me. Not to my old boss. Not to the company that had kicked me to the curb. To me. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I wasn't just a former employee anymore. I was the gatekeeper. My patent, the one I'd filed on Frank's advice. thinking it was just a piece of paper, had turned into the linchpin of their entire architecture. I had leverage. Real leverage. The kind of leverage that made men in suits sweat and PR teams draft statements in the middle of the night. It was a heady feeling. One that made the last 4 weeks of tears and cold cereal taste a little less bitter. I dialed Ariel's number. "Chen," she answered, as sharp and efficient as always. "It's Maya," I said, my voice steady. "What's the play here?" She let out a breath. A sound halfway between relief and anticipation. "We meet with Vortex. Just us. No Zenith works in the room. They're desperate to make this go away cleanly. They want the asset, not the baggage. And you." I could hear the smile in her voice. "Are the asset." I swallowed. "And what do I say to them?" "You say nothing they can use against you," she said. "You let me handle the talking. You sit there and let the silence do the work." I thought about the countless times I'd sat in meetings with Trevor and his minions. Watching them take credit for my work. Dismiss my ideas. Pat me on the head like a good little girl. I'd learned the power of silence from them. How it made people uncomfortable. How it forced them to fill the void with their own insecurities. Now it was my turn to wield that weapon. The meeting was scheduled for Friday. I barely slept the night before. Every hour dragging by like a year. My mind kept replaying every moment of my time at Zenith, the nights I'd worked late. The bugs I'd crushed, the features I'd built, the way they'd discarded me when I'd outlived my usefulness. Friday morning dawned gray and cold. The kind of day that matched the steel in my spine. I pulled on my best blazer, one I'd bought for interviews that never went anywhere, and tied my hair back in a tight bun. No nonsense. No distractions. The conference room was in one of those glass and steel towers that smelled like money. The receptionist gave me a nervous smile as she led me inside. As if she knew the battle that was about to go down. Ariel was already there, standing at the head of the table like a general surveying the battlefield. She wore a sharp navy suit that made her look like she could slice through granite. She gave me a nod, proud, confident. Across from us sat Yumi Tanaka, Vortex's general counsel. She looked composed, every inch the high-powered executive. But there was a flicker of anxiety in her eyes. "Ms. Caldwell," she began, her tone polite but wary. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." I nodded but said nothing. Ariel gave me an approving glance. Yumi cleared her throat. "We understand there's been some complications with the Zenith Works acquisition. We believe your patent is at the heart of those issues." Ariel steepled her fingers. "Ms. Caldwell is fully aware of her rights and the significance of her patent. She also understands the value it represents, not just to Zenith, but to anyone who wants to leverage that architecture." Yumi's composure cracked for a split second. Then she recovered. "We'd like to discuss the possibility of licensing. Or, if she's open to it, an outright acquisition." My heart was hammering so hard I was sure they could hear it. This was it, the moment everything pivoted. Ariel leaned forward, her voice smooth and lethal. "Let's talk numbers." I watched as Yumi's team scrambled, pulling out folders, scribbling notes, calculating figures. I didn't say a word. I just let them sweat. For years, I'd been the one on the other side of that table, waiting for scraps, hoping for a pat on the head. Now I was the one who got to decide if they even got to play in my sandbox. I thought about Trevor, about the way he'd dismissed me with an email, about the way he'd sent Samir to do his dirty work, about how he'd tried to buy me off with a severance check and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And I thought about Frank, who'd seen this coming, who'd given me the tools to protect myself. Who'd taught me that sometimes you had to build your own bomb shelter. Even when everyone else thought you were crazy. By the time we walked out of that room, I felt like I was standing taller. Ariel had negotiated a preliminary deal that would have made my old salary look like pocket change. And that was just the opening offer. As we stepped into the elevator, Ariel turned to me, her eyes gleaming. "Congratulations," she said. "You're not the pawn anymore. You're the queen." I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. And for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel forced. I had power now. The kind of power that came from knowledge. From resilience. From surviving every time they tried to knock me down. I had changed, and I was never going back. The elevator ride down from that meeting felt like the longest 30 seconds of my life. I stood there, staring at my reflection in the mirrored walls, shoulders back, chin lifted, eyes clear. I looked different, not because my hair was perfectly tied or because my blazer looked professional, but because there was something in my eyes that hadn't been there before: certainty. Ariel glanced at me as the doors opened. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm more than okay." Outside, the city buzzed with its usual chaotic rhythm, horns honking, people darting around like worker ants. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was just another ant in the colony. I was holding something no one else had, a piece of technology that could bring billion-dollar companies to their knees. We walked to a nearby coffee shop, one of those trendy places that charged $10 for a latte but didn't skimp on the foam art. Ariel ordered a black coffee. No sugar. I got a cappuccino with cinnamon. As we sat down, she leaned in. "All business. Vortex is going to come back with an offer," she said, "and it's going to be big." I swallowed. "How big?" She shrugged. "Let's just say you won't need to worry about paying rent, or buying a house, or sending your grandkids to college." I laughed. A little too loud. "I never thought I'd be in this position," I said, voice shaking. I was the invisible one. The one who wrote the code that kept everything from crashing while the rest of the team argued about Slack emojis. Ariel's eyes softened. "Invisible? Maya, you're the reason their entire platform works. You're the backbone they never wanted to admit they needed. And now you get to choose what comes next." Her words hit me like a hammer. I'd spent so many years giving everything I had to a company that treated me like an afterthought. I'd sacrificed nights, weekends, even relationships for a job that thanked me with a pink slip. And now, suddenly, I was the one with options. Vortex wanted to license the patent. Zenith Works wanted to bury me in legal threats. But in that moment, I realized I didn't have to play by their rules anymore. I set down my coffee, hands trembling just a little. "What if," I said slowly, "I didn't just license it? What if I built something new? Something that wasn't theirs, something that was mine?" Ariel's eyebrows shot up. "You mean, a startup?" The word felt foreign on my tongue. I'd always thought of startups as bro-packed. Beer keg in the office. Hustle porn nonsense. But this would be different. I wouldn't be building ping-pong tables and free snacks. I'd be building something real. An architecture that didn't just distribute load but empowered people. "It's possible," Ariel said, her lawyerly tone shifting into that of a friend. "You have the patent. You have the code. You have the experience. And," she leaned in, voice fierce, "you have the drive. I've seen it." My heart raced. "But I don't have funding." She smirked. "You will. Vortex is desperate. They'll throw money at you just to get your signature on a licensing deal. But you don't have to settle for that. You can negotiate seed money as part of the package. Make them your first investor, not your boss." My mind spun. Could I do that? Could I go from being the quiet developer to being the CEO of my own company? 1,000 doubts surged in my chest. What if I failed? What if no one wanted to follow me? What if I lost everything? But then I thought about all the times I'd stayed up till 3 a.m. debugging code that no one else wanted to touch. I thought about Frank telling me that the vultures would always try to wear my bones as trophies. I thought about the email that fired me without even saying my name. No, not this time. I met Ariel's eyes. "Let's do it," I said, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Let's make them my investors. Let's build something that's mine." She grinned, a slow, predatory grin that made me glad she was on my side. "Now you're talking." We spent the next hour sketching out a plan. Ariel would draft a licensing agreement that gave Vortex rights to use the patent, but with a catch. They'd fund my new venture as part of the deal, providing seed capital that would let me build the next generation of the platform on my own terms. I'd own the company. I'd hire the team. I'd set the vision. It was terrifying, and it was exhilarating. As we wrapped up, Ariel stood, gathering her notes. "Maya," she said, "you're not the same person who got that pink slip. You're not the same person who sat in the dark eating cereal out of a chipped mug. You're the one holding the cards now. You're the one who gets to decide how this story ends." Her words echoed in my mind as I walked home that night. The city felt different, like I was seeing it for the first time. The same cracked sidewalks, the same traffic, But now I felt like I was walking with purpose. When I got home, I powered up my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor. It felt like the beginning of a new chapter, one I was going to write for myself this time. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to build. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through the blinds. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I was about to be steamrolled by someone else's agenda. I stretched, feeling the cracks in my back from too many nights hunched over a keyboard. And let the realization settle in. I was finally building something for myself. Coffee in hand, I sat down at the table and flipped open my laptop. The screen glowed like a promise. The blinking cursor waiting for me to shape my own destiny. Ariel had sent over the first draft of the licensing agreement with Vortex. The numbers were staggering, more money than I'd ever made in my entire career. And attached to it was a seed investment clause that would set me up to launch my own venture. I read every word, my heart pounding. This was real. No more Friday night pints to drown my frustrations. No more soul-killing stand-ups where my ideas got overshadowed by louder voices. No more pink slips typed by cowards too afraid to sign their names. This was the chance Frank had always told me to be ready for. My phone buzzed with a text from Ariel. Maya, Vortex wants to talk again. They're getting antsy. Zenith's lawyers are pushing them hard. You're in the driver's seat now. I smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. I wasn't a cog in their machine anymore. I was the engineer of my own future. I called Ariel. She answered immediately. Ready? She asked. More than, I said. She chuckled. That's what I like to hear. Remember, Maya, this is your time to set the tone. You're not negotiating from a place of fear anymore. You're negotiating from a place of power. I closed my eyes for a second, letting that sink in. Then I said, let's make them sweat. The video conference with Vortex was surreal. I'd been in 1,000 corporate meetings. Rooms filled with men in tailored suits who looked at me like I was part of the decor. Like I was the help. But this time, it was different. Yumi Tanaka appeared on the screen, flanked by 2 other Vortex executives. Her smile was professional but nervous. Ms. Caldwell, she began. Thank you for joining us today. I met her gaze. Unflinching. Let's talk, I said simply. Ariel sat beside me, the legal sword at my back. But it was my voice that carried the weight. Yumi cleared her throat. We'd like to move forward with the licensing agreement. Our team has reviewed your draft. And I have a counterproposal, I said. Her eyebrows shot up. Oh, I felt the shift in the room. They hadn't expected me to come with my own plan. But I'd learned from the best, Frank, who'd taught me that the best defense was a damn good offense. I'm willing to license the patent, I continued, but I want more than a check. I want Vortex to be the first investor in my new venture. I'll build the next generation of the platform. But this time, on my terms, with my team, my vision, and with your support. The silence that followed was electric. I could see the gears turning in Yumi's head, the way her colleagues shifted in their seats. Ariel leaned in, her voice cool and precise. Ms. Caldwell is offering you exclusive early access to her new architecture. A chance to be at the forefront of the next big thing. She's not just licensing a patent, she's giving you a seat at the table of the future. I held my breath as the Vortex team exchanged glances. Then Yumi smiled, tight, but genuine. That's unexpected, but intriguing. Give us a few days to review the details. We'll be in touch. When the call ended, I collapsed back in my chair, heart racing. Ariel turned to me with a grin. You just turned the tables on them. Maya, you're not just a developer anymore. You're a founder. The word felt strange on my tongue, founder. I'd spent my entire career being the quiet one in the corner. The problem solver, the bug fixer, the glue that held everything together while others got the spotlight. But now, I was building my own spotlight. That night, I lay awake thinking about all the times I'd let myself be talked over in meetings. All the times I'd let credit slip away because I didn't want to be that person. I thought about Trevor and his fake concerned voice. About the way he'd tried to buy me out with a smile. Not anymore. I reached for my old notebook. The one I used to scribble ideas in during long stand-up meetings. I flipped through pages of half-finished concepts and dusty architectures until I found the one Frank and I had talked about years ago, the one that had never gotten past the prototype stage because management didn't see the ROI. Adaptive load distribution in decentralized modular architectures. It wasn't just a patent. It was the key to building systems that could scale, that could empower developers instead of burying them under bureaucracy. I started sketching, my hand moving fast as the ideas came pouring out. For the first time, I wasn't just thinking about making something work. I was thinking about making something matter. Something that couldn't be taken away with a pink slip or a change in management. This was my legacy, and I was going to build it on my own terms. As the sun came up, I felt tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that comes from building. From growing, from taking charge of your own story. I wasn't the same Maya who had gotten that email 4 weeks ago. I was the Maya who'd faced down corporate titans and come out stronger. The Maya who'd learned to trust her instincts, to fight for her worth, to refuse to let others define her. The Maya who was finally free, by the time the final offer from Vortex landed in my inbox. I'd already spent a week rehearsing every possible outcome. I'd paced the floorboards of my tiny apartment until they felt as worn as the soles of my sneakers. Playing through every scenario, every boardroom negotiation, every smirking CEO, every smarmy lawyer's threat, I was done being scared. The email subject line simply read, "Final terms proposal." Ariel had told me to expect a fight. But Vortex's offer was more than generous. It wasn't just the licensing fee, it was the seed investment. Enough money to give me not just a seat at the table but the chance to build the table from scratch. I scrolled through the document. Heart racing. My patent, the one Frank had insisted I file, the one Trevor had tried to buy out with a pink slip, was now worth more than I'd ever dreamed. Vortex wanted exclusive licensing rights to the current architecture, plus first refusal rights on any future development. And they wanted me at the helm of the next generation. Me, not Trevor. Not Zenith, me. I could practically hear Frank's voice in my head. Told you so. I hit reply and typed a single line. I accept. Let's build something incredible. Send. I let out a long, shuddering breath. This was it, my chance to build, to lead, to be more than the quiet developer who fixed bugs no one else wanted to touch. I was the architect now, the one who defined the system. Not the one who just made it run. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. 1,000 memories flooded back, long nights in a half-lit office. The glow of my ThinkPad screen. The hum of the server room at 2 a.m. I remembered Trevor's fake smile and Samir's nervous voice. I remembered Frank's grin, the way he always clipped his badge to his sock because badges are for cattle. All of that had brought me here. The next few weeks blurred into a rush of calls, documents, and lawyers. Ariel handled the legal firestorm with the precision of a brain surgeon. Every time Zenith tried to raise a fuss, she shut them down with a single email that read like a corporate death sentence. Trevor tried calling me once. I didn't answer. One morning, I woke up to a news alert on my phone. Zenith Works merger collapses amid IP scandal. CEO faces board backlash. I smiled, not out of spite, well, maybe a little, but because it meant the system wasn't as bulletproof as they'd led me to believe. All it took was one person to stand up and say no. A few days later, I met with the Vortex team in person. We gathered in a conference room that looked out over the bay. The water glinting like a promise. Yumi was there, along with 2 senior VPs and their CTO. They congratulated me, thanked me for my vision, called me a trailblazer. I'd been called a lot of things in my career. Quiet, reliable, thorough, but never a trailblazer. As they laid out their roadmap, I realized they weren't just buying a patent or a line of code. They were investing in me, in my ideas, my vision, my drive to build something that wouldn't just work, it would change the way things were done. After the meeting, Yumi pulled me aside. Maya, she said, we're lucky to have you. We believe in what you're building. It was the kind of validation I'd spent years chasing. The kind that always felt just out of reach. But now, I realized, I didn't need it, because I already believed in myself. That night, I went home and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. The same city that had once felt so cold and indifferent now felt like a blank canvas. I thought about the girl who'd sat on her couch in sweatpants, eating Cheerios out of a chipped mug, wondering how she'd survive. I thought about the one who'd hidden behind her laptop while the suits made decisions about her future. And I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, smarter, unafraid, a woman who'd stood her ground, who'd refused to let them buy her silence, who'd turned a pink slip into a power play. This was my story now, my platform, my code, my name on the patent. I pulled out my old ThinkPad, the one with the missing keys, and opened it. The screen flickered, but it still worked. I pulled up the architecture diagram Frank and I had drafted all those years ago. I started making notes, ideas for the next generation, ways to make it more resilient, more secure, more empowering, because that's what I wanted. Not just to build another product but to build something that made developers feel like they mattered. Like they weren't just cogs in a machine. I thought about Frank's voice, telling me that vultures wore your bones like trophies. I thought about Trevor's fake smile and Samir's apology. And I thought about every time I'd felt like I didn't belong. Now, I knew I did. I was Maya Caldwell. I was a founder, a creator, a force to be reckoned with. And I wasn't just writing code anymore. I was writing my own legacy. So I raised my coffee cup, real coffee, from beans with a backstory, and toasted to the future. Not their future, mine. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that power isn't something you're handed, it's something you build. For years, I thought my worth was tied to the approval of bosses, the praise of colleagues, or the size of a paycheck. I gave everything I had, my time, my health, my loyalty, only to be discarded when I became inconvenient. But standing up for myself, holding my ground, and refusing to let them define my value taught me something I wish I'd known from the start. Respect is earned by refusing to be underestimated. The world may see you as disposable, but that doesn't mean you have to accept it. You are more than the lines of code you write, the tasks you complete, or the goals you meet. You are the architect of your own story, and no one can take that away from you unless you let them. So build your bomb shelter, stand your ground, and remember, sometimes, the quiet ones are the ones who change the game. In your own career, whether in tech or any field, learn to see yourself as more than a worker bee. Document your contributions. Keep copies of your work where you can prove your value. Understand your rights, intellectual property, patents, your own voice. When the time comes, don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Advocate for yourself, even if it means ruffling feathers. And never underestimate the power of quiet resilience. It's the developers, the thinkers, the doers who build the world, not the ones who talk the loudest in meetings. Stand tall, stay sharp, and always remember that the story you're writing is yours alone, and it's up to you to make it count. Thank you for choosing to listen to this story among thousands of stories out there. Like and subscribe to continue listening to the latest stories.